right, good evening. This is the Wyoming Board of Education. I'm calling this meeting to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Broderick? Here. Mr. Feldmeyer?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Mrs. G? Here. Mrs. Aller?
Here, thank you. May I have the Pledge of Allegiance? Join me. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. We have a special presentation this evening. I will turn it over to you, Mr. Weber, if you want to get everybody up and ready and introduced, and I'm going to move out of the way.
Yeah, we are super excited to have our guests from WCS Architects here with us today. And they are guiding, we've said it before, they're taking the baton from our CAC and they're guiding our work with our primary schools facility team to take a close look at our current facilities, to consider our strategic plan and the education that our strategic plan calls for now and in the future. And then will help us go through these great discussions with our committee and ultimately with our community on potential options for the future of our primary school facilities. And so very exciting to be connected with this wonderful team. So with us today, we have Jim Voorhees and Katie Davison. Just the two of you, right? Yes. All right. So if you would like to come on up, we're excited to hear from you today. I think you should be all set up.
Oh, yeah.
We must have taken something.
Well,
who needs a binder? Who doesn't have a binder?
Oh,
You can buy fives.
I don't.
Extra.
Do I have one?
no, I have one.
I have one. Oh, and
I have one
I
on
have
the
one.
other space.
Okay. Yeah, I get a binder. Fill in your header.
Oh, you feel it, yes.
Anybody else?
What else is
I think he's getting.
So two there and then one.
We can share.
Two over here. Yeah, if you have.
Yeah, if you have one. Yeah.
Okay. This baby is ready.
This building.
Yeah.
Central office. Maybe that's what we'll start. Sure.
Well, congratulations on your football. I'm a big football fan, so I just. That's great. You're doing so well on that. Quick introductions. I'm Jim Orris with BSWC Architects. I'm one of the owners of the company. Been doing school projects for over 30 years now. Why don't you introduce yourself, Katie?
And I'm Katie Davison. I'm an associate with the firm. I've been designing schools for about 20 years, and I'm the director of interior design. So I'm focused more on how the interior spaces can shape.
Yeah. So just a little bit about our firm. We are located in Mason, so we're real close here. We've been in business now for 70 years. I'm second generation architecture firm. Been doing schools all those years. We've done a lot of the schools. Hit the button. We do a lot of the schools in the area. A lot of the projects you probably recognize. We do all of Mason's work. We work at Lakota. We've done a lot of the Cincinnati public work. Reading recently. We do stuff up in Columbus. So that's the main focus of our work. About 90% of our work is the school projects. We do new buildings, renovations, additions, master planning like we're doing for you. And I will say, I think master planning is some of the most enjoyable part of it because it's really starting from no ideas. And it's this building process of looking at all the aspects of master planning and then coming up with a final goal at the end. So it's actually very rewarding to do master planning, particularly when everybody at the end says, oh yeah, that's the plan. We're on board. That's great. So anyway, master plan's great. We love that. Full on Katie. They're again just some more of our projects that we work on. And that's just naming of some of them. So this was what I want to do tonight really is to catch everybody up. Kind of, we've had one meeting so far, one committee meeting. We've had several other meetings with them and Rhonda, but one committee meeting. And so I wanted to kind of fill you in on what we did on that first meeting. We also have a committee meeting tomorrow, which is committee meeting number 2. And I'm going to give you a quick update, a sneak peek of what we're going to do tomorrow. And then finally, we have educational visioning coming up next week, where we're going to have in lots of different people and go through educational visioning. So we'll kind of just go through the agenda there. So you'll kind of have a feel for what we're doing or what we have planned and what's coming in the future. So you'll kind of be informed. If you have questions as we get through, by all means, stop us and ask questions that you need to. Let's go ahead and look through. I'm going to give you.
And just to note, all of this is in your
Yeah, it's in your
binders.
binders too. And there again, a lot of the stuff you're seeing was from meeting number 1, and so we're gonna buzz through a lot of it, and I'm going to give you the abbreviated version of meeting number 1. Okay, so this is kind of in general the poster or the thing that we use to come up with master plans, and our feelings is that they come up with a good master plan. You have to look at all the aspects that affect the master plan of education. And so we think it's a real building process. So the goal is, particularly with these binders, is that at each meeting, we're looking at a different aspect of the educational master planning, and we're providing you with data that we can give you. We're getting input from the committees. We're building this model. And the goal then is, we know when you go to the community, there's going to be questions. There's always questions in and around the community and what you're doing with the schools and that. So our goal is to always give you or arm you with everything you would need. Any question that somebody may ask, we want to have it in this binder that you can open it up and say, well, look here, we did a study on this. Our committee looked at this in depth. Here's the facts on it. Here's what we're looking at. So we want to give you all the information that you would need when this goes out to the community, that you're comfortable that you have all the information that you need and can build that. So that's kind of the goal of our master planning process. And there again, like I said before, we like to start where there's really no perceptions on what the final answer is going to be. But when we get to the end of it, we're hoping that it's dead nuts apparent. Oh yeah, that's what we need to be doing. So that's the goal of our master plan. So timeline wise, they're going to be yellow marks or holidays, and all the time when we do these master planning things, we kind of got to schedule around the holidays. So this was Thanksgiving right here on this bar. This is Christmas coming up. So as you can see, we've got the meeting tomorrow. We've got the visioning session coming up, and we have another committee meeting that we're going to get in before Christmas time. So there's lots of activity coming in these next couple of weeks. Then we'll take a Christmas break because people are traveling and that's hard to get people together. And then we'll come back, have more committee meetings. In these meetings, we'll start actually bringing some of the master plan options to look at. All these meetings up in here are really they're again studying the different aspects of the master plan. Once we get down into kind of these meetings, that's when we'll start actually bringing some master plans to the committee and looking at those. When we get then farther out here in March and April of next year, that's when we're hoping to produce some final presentation stuff and present it to you as the board. And then if you want to put that information out for the committee for comments and that kind of thing, that would be the time to do that. So that's kind of the schedule for us. Okay, so this is kind of, now I'm going to kind of start in. This is really kind of the informational part of the committee meeting number 1 that we had. This, of course, is your district as it stands right now. And this is really just to identify where the 3 elementary schools are located. There again, there's not a whole lot more to say about that. You can see all the housing that's in your district, and there's really not a lot of open land left. But again, most of your schools are located over here on the eastern side of the district. Okay. We go from there then, and this is actually a zoning map of the city of Wyoming. And what zoning is, if you're not familiar with zoning, is every community or every city has zoning regulations. And those are put in place to basically control what's built on different areas of the land, and it puts some requirements on it. So as you can see, basically, your 3 elementary schools are all located in residential areas, okay? And most of the Wyoming, city of Wyoming is residential, is zoned residential. The difference in these zoning issues are, it's basically the size of the lot that you have to have a minimum size lot. The only one that is a little different is Elm Elementary down here, and it is in the historic zone. You can see this blue line that goes around this area right here. That's actually the historical zone there. The good part of it is it's a non-contributing, what they call non-contributing. So there are some special regulations in this area, but because it's non-contributing, they're not quite as strict as it would be as if you had a house or something there. So again, just to kind of show you where the different type of zones are in the community. Okay. So one of the first things we did at the first meeting was really to try to educate you on what you have currently. And we kind of feel the best way to let you know what you have is to compare it with other districts or to compare it with the state. So what you're going to see here is a lot of this talk I'm going to be talking about is comparing it to the OFCC. Now, the OFCC is Ohio Facilities Construction Commission. Is anybody, are we familiar with that terminology?
Yes.
Somewhat?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so anyway, just real quickly, the OFCC. Oh, okay, I'll give you the basically the OFCC or the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, they basically co-fund school districts or co-fund construction. And how much money they give to the district is based on the equity rating of the district. Now, just so you know, you do not have to be a part of the OFCC. It is a voluntary program that schools can either join or choose not to join. Okay. There's a large percentage of the districts in Ohio right now that do participate in that project or in that process. So there's a lot of school districts, and then there are school districts that opt not to get in it. The reason to not get in it is if your equity rating is very very high, the state share that they would give you is very small. It's a very small portion. So that would be one reason. The other reason is if you are part of this program, the OFCC, you have to build your schools to their requirements. Okay. And basically they have a binder that's fatter than these, jam full of pages of everything from the finishes of your building into the size of it. It could be, it's very regulated process. And the reason they do that is they're trying to get parity between all the school districts in Ohio. So that's why they set it up that way, so that everything is kind of the same.
May I interrupt for just a minute? John, we went with them for the middle school and chose not to use the funding because of the requirements they made on what they wanted in terms of the building.
Okay.
The OFCC was born out of the Durrell case many years ago.
Sure.
Kind of I don't know what round it was, maybe 2 or 3 rounds of Durrell. As a response to sort of the school funding mandate in Ohio, aside from the operating cost, one of the original premises of the Durrell case was that, my building isn't
up to par in terms of education. And so the state said, okay, one way to attack that is we're going to create the Ohio School Facility Commission that's changed names. And then we're just going to put money into funding schools.
Sure.
And so for 20, 30, 40 years now, they've been pumping money into schools across the state. And so I'm going to oversimplify this, but the poorer your school district is, the more money you receive to rebuild your new schools. Right. So that's been going on for 35 years or so.
Thank you.
So anyway, the reason that we go through this is they're a really good thing to compare to, because there are a large amount of schools built in Ohio right now under their guidelines. And so they've kind of become, the OFCC has really kind of become the standard of the state. All their standards, all their classroom sizes, the things that go into the school building, those have pretty much kind of been standardized. So that's one advantage. If you don't want to go with the OFCC, then you're open to do whatever you want. You can build whatever size classrooms you want. You can build, you can build whatever kind of spaces you want. There's no regulations that you're held back on. But anyway, so there again, to kind of let you know what you have is we did compare your 3 elementary schools as used to the OFCCs. So as you can see, basically, most of your classrooms are around the 700 square foot mark, 768, 773, 760. The state, if you were building a new school building, their standard classroom is a 900 square foot classroom. And but the reality is you can go 10% up bigger or 10% smaller. So a lot of the classrooms built in the state are 810 square feet. So there again, your classrooms are small as compared with state standards. The other thing you'll know from the state, if you're building new schools, they're going to put 25 kids in each classroom. That's the way that they determine the size of your building is. They say there's a classroom for every kid and there's 25 kids in every single classroom. That's how they mandate how many classrooms you get and the size of your building. So there again, a lot of your schools right now, you have less students per classroom than would be recommended by the state. I'll go on from there. Okay, here's just some more comparison, so you'll kind of have an idea of what you have. There again, this is looking at classroom sizes. Another thing to look at, we talked about classroom sizes. Kindergarten classroom sizes, the state says that they should be, the baseline is 1,200 square feet. There again, they give you 10% either way. So it's either 1080 to 1320 square feet. There again, at a couple of your schools, you're very undersized. You're, like at Hilltop, your average out about 785 at Vermont or 784. So again, your kindergarten rooms are very, very undersized compared to state standards. The number of students we kind of talked about. Let's talk about site sizes. There again, there's a formula that the state would use if you were building a new school of how many acres you need for X amount of students. They're saying for an urban site, basically for a 400 student building, that they would recommend that you have a minimum of 5.75 acres. As you can see, Elm is on a 1.71 acre site. Hilltop is 5.13 acres, and Vermont is 2.01 acres. So there again, all your sites are much smaller than what would be recommended by the state of Ohio if you were building a new building on that thing. It's also kind of interesting to see if you're a suburban type site, they're saying you need to be put up to 14 acres for an elementary school. It is a lot of land.
That's suburban, so we are still considered urban, because I mean,
Yeah.
what's your cutoff of a?
Well,
What could be considered?
there's no super magic to that. But I think they would look at your district and say certainly you're urban type district, just because of the land area that you have. Construction dates on your building, you can see them down here. We're gonna look at those a little bit later on. We'll go through that again. I do want to go through this, though. The state there again, when they come out to look at your building, if you have an older school building, they'll come out and they do an assessment of that building. And what they do is they go and they check the HVAC systems, they look at the condition of the windows, the condition of the roof, the electrical service. They have a long list of things and they'll assess it. And then they'll assign a cost to replace those systems, either upgrade those systems or replace those systems. And their goal, you're doing a renovation, is to bring that building up so it's like a brand new building, or it's reset for the next 30 years. So they'll come out and they'll look at it and they come up with a line item for each repair that they need on that building. And that's a cost to renovate. So then what they do is they take the cost to renovate and they divide it by the cost of a new school building. If that number is less than 66% or greater than 66%, they want you to tear that building down and replace it. Okay. So again, I tell you that because probably if the OFCC came in and did an assessment on your buildings right now, the cost to renovate those buildings or bring those all the way back up to like a new building, you would be probably close to the same where they would want to take those buildings offline and do new building. Okay. Questions on any of that?
I don't think any of that data surprises us. It's just interesting to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we know that our classrooms are small. I think we know that our sites are small. It's just so interesting to see it all laid out like that.
It is
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we kind of jump into the individual buildings. We're gonna look at Elm first. Again, this is just a drawing, different colors show the era when this thing was built. So original building, 1954 was the greenish type area. Addition in 94 and addition in 2000. To kind of let you know how old that building is. Okay, then what we did is we started to look at the actual classrooms and spaces in the buildings. To see what kind of spaces you have, what kind of spaces you need, all this type of thing. So basically we did a color coded thing where you can see all the blue areas are basically the academic core areas, which include any kind of educational space for classroom. Each one of these also has a square footage in it. All the rooms that we have in the buildings have square footages. So if you want to kind of look at those and kind of get a feel for how big some of the spaces are as you go through the buildings. Some of the big things that I'll point out that jumped out at us is kind of the first time we visited is all of your entries are not really a safe and secure type entryway that would be constructed on a new type school building. You know, people basically have to come in here and then they basically have to walk through the corridors and that to get over to the reception and check in at that time too. All the new school buildings that are being built now have a vestibule where you come in and you have to go into a door into the office, sign in, and then you're released through another door and then out into the school. So it gives you a level of safety, which again is a big thing in today's school construction. So that's one big thing you see. The other thing that you're going to see in all your buildings is that you're very shy on storage space. I mean, there's just really no storage in the buildings. You're very shy on specials. Most of the buildings don't have art rooms. They don't have music rooms. They don't have gyms in them. I mean, we have a combination gym and multi-use room except for Hilltop Worship. But those are some of the big things that we see as we look at the buildings and just some general thoughts and things that jump out right away. Okay, I'm not going to go through these. There's lots of these cards, so you want to take this home and look at them. But what we've done there again, if you can see, I call them over here. This is the OFCC recommendations. So there again, if you were building a new elementary for 200 students, which is close to the size of several of yours, they would recommend that you put in these spaces here. And then what we've done is this is your existing building over here, so you can kind of compare what you had to what would be required by the state of Ohio if you were going to build a new school. Couple other things I'll let you know. State of Ohio, the OFCC would not build a 200 student building now. The minimum size building that they will even think about is a 400 student building. In their eyes, bigger is better, because bigger is less cost for the state. So if they're co-funding your building, they would not come back and rebuild a 200 student building. Okay, just to tell you know. So our numbers here, we're comparing these. You can do that, but just be aware that they would not co-fund that type of building. There again, you can look through these charts, and there again, what you're going to find is, your Cheyenne office type spaces, basically on all of your buildings. All your special visual art, music, phys ed, your dining rooms are all small. This room, for example, they're saying a student dining should be 3,000 square feet. You're at 2,300 square feet. So, you don't have a gym. Your cafeteria is smaller than what would be built today. So it's a lot of those type spaces where you have those differences. There again, all your building services, your custodians, your kitchens are extremely small as compared to what we can put in today. So those are kind of common themes throughout. I won't go through all these numbers. But... Okay, so site-wise on Elm, this is your site. The blue line is your property line. And then what we have here, you see the red line, that is the building setback line. There again, that's from the zoning codes that we talked about earlier. They're again, the zoning codes are trying to set up and protect your neighbors, so that you don't build right to the property line or build clear out to the street or something like that. So there's setback lines that are required by the zoning code, and you can see those. So as you can see with Elm, there's really not a lot of room, if any, to do any kind of expansion on the building. You've got the playground on this side of the building, a little bit of parking lot, got some play area back here, and then basically the building is pretty much, this is already over the setback line a little bit, the addition put out there. So just to show you that, not a lot of space for addition. Okay. This one is a topography map. So what you see here is every one of these lines that you see here, these all represent a 1 foot drop in the elevation of your site. So we show this just because, as you can see, in the tighter the lines are, that means the steeper that the slope would be coming off of the building. The farther the lines go apart, that means your ground would be flatter ground. So there again, we're just showing this as you can see it falls off on the back here fairly substantially. So there again, trying to get additions on some of these would be tricky because of some of the grades. Yep. This is next one, we're built top of course. There again, the main structures were built in 57. There were some renovations in here, the condition put on in 1994. Now, we don't have all, but I think there's been some minor renovations in that have happened all through the years. Basically, we're trying to track the major renovations or additions that happened. So there has been some work done through the years. The biggest, again, I think everybody knows, the biggest issue with Hilltop, of course, is accessibility. It's number one. There's steps and stairs and ramps and things basically all over the site. And number two, probably the security and just keeping track of students and teachers and collaboration and all those things are really big issues with this particular school. Same thing here. I won't go through the numbers. But there again, they're all very similar, all three buildings are very similar, what they lack. This is the site plan for Hilltop. There again, as you can see, this one, you look at this, the property line there again is blue. Red is the building setback line, and you're like, oh, well, there's pretty much room, let's just head on. Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, then you go to the next slide, and again, as I was telling you, the contour lines, and well, this one's, there's contour lines everywhere, and that, of course, because everybody knows that it's a very extremely rolly site, so. Whereas there is some extra land here, a lot of it would be very difficult to use and develop. Not impossible, but can be costly. Finally, we have the one. There again, it was original building in 51, additions in 55, 60, and 94. I have the same layout, I have the same issue with the safe and secure entryway, wagon storage. I have all those things. Site here. There again, with our building setback lines, you can tell basically this building has already been built right to the setback lines. There is some room for expansion out here on this baseball field. If you did choose to do that, you probably could come this way, some of that building. There again, this is the contour to grade. There again, this is fairly flat. Out here where that baseball diamond is currently. So you do up very out on this one. Okay. Don't have a lot of information on this, and at committee meeting number 1, we did not have the middle school done. We had the 3 elementary schools. We soon found out though that when we're doing this master plan, that the reality is that this school may come into play with some of the options in that. So we, since our last meeting, we're going to bring this building to the meeting tomorrow. We've kind of done the same thing that we did with the other buildings, and we color coded it. This building is 150,000 square feet, so it's a fairly large building. But you can flip through those. And that's really all the work we just kind of identified the different functions within that building. Let's do, wait, go back one page. Let's do look at the site while we're on this one, because it could come into play here. But again, I don't know if everybody's aware of your property lines on this site. This is the middle school. This is the building we're in right now. They know where we're at. Blue line is property line, and the red line is the setback line again. So again, just kind of showing you that you do have some space. This is parking out here currently. But it's kind of an odd shaped lot, but do have some area here. Okay. All right, that was really kind of a recap of meeting number 1 in a nutshell. Questions on that? Good. Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is probably for down the line, but are you already coming to a conclusion about what's possible? Like in my mind, I'm drawing conclusions. We can't really build, like we can't meet the standards of the state. Like, have you in your mind thought, is this driving you so far into a particular direction?
Well, somewhat, yes. We're always thinking about it. We try not to.
Yeah.
We try to let the process work.
Okay.
So, but yes, I mean, yeah, we're thinking all the time. Okay, so another thing that we did with meeting number 1 is we did a survey.
Right.
Has everybody seen that survey?
No, it should be, is it?
Oh, that's serving.
Yeah, this sort of survey that we reviewed with committee at meeting number 1, and then Tim took it to the schools, and then it was passed out, and basically all the teachers, everybody that worked in the schools participated in the survey. And I think we got really good.
Yeah, good. We have not. with that.
Okay.
Fall for that sort of.
Okay, well, we got really good response.
Yeah,
You know, people filled it out, circled them and handed it back in, and so I feel we got really good response. So, yeah, okay, we've done a staff meeting.
Can't get out until you turn your survey.
Yeah.
Was the rest of the.
So I think it's pretty interesting. I'm not totally surprised at the results, but I think it's good to review. So this is a survey summary, and this takes all three buildings into account. We took them and we averaged all three of the buildings together. You'll see on your pages after this, we've also done for individual schools the same survey. But this is the summary of all three put together. So just to review this, you know, the first question was what's your job in the building? Well, 50% of the people responded were teachers. There was also special teachers, innovation or intervention, office people, administrators, and others. So that was just a breakdown of who took the survey. You're going to see there's a percentage, so this means 50% of the people took the survey, and this is actually the number. So we got 27 responses from the teachers. Okay, so the first question was, my physical building is currently used as all the spaces and rooms required to provide the highest quality education for my students. Examples were classrooms, specialty rooms, storage, prep areas, offices, all that kind of thing. So what we were trying to get at is, for the people that work at that building, do you have the spaces in the building you need to do your job the best you can? And unfortunately, as you can see, basically, number one got 50% of the vote, and that means it does not support. So the scale went does not support over here to strongly supports. So the reality is the majority of the people, as you can see, says that you don't have the right spaces to do the work in the school. Okay, second question was, the current number of students attending my school is ideal for providing the best education for the students. There again, pretty well spread out, probably a little more majority over in this way that says strongly disagree. So they're saying that the size of the school, or the number of students going to that school is not ideal. So I'm guessing the thing that was probably predicated on the schools being overcrowded.
Yeah, I think space, the amount of space within a given room probably impacts that answer.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the number of students, but the room that's in that space
Yeah.
based on the size and number of students, right?
Yeah.
Okay, next question was, I could be more efficient at my job if I had more same grade level teachers in my building to team with, share ideas, and collaborate with. There again, extremely small in support of that they would like more teachers in the same grade level in the same buildings. So I gotta admit, I was kind of surprised how strong it came out. But that was very strong. Okay, next one was, does the space or room you currently work in support your ability to do your job efficiently and effectively? So the examples were the room size, lighting, HVAC.
That's a question on the last one.
Sure.
So when you say in my building, Hilltop, I don't know exactly where all the grades are. That's the one where there's different buildings in theory versus Elm or Vermont. So we interpret that for Elm or Vermont to say they might have more than one person who's also teaching their grade, that they would think about having 4 or 5 of them being better than one other. Is that the way to think about that?
I think.
Yeah, yeah,
In my mind, because even at Hilton,
yeah.
you and I would still be the fourth grade teachers somewhere. I mean,
Yeah.
we would still be.
Yeah.
I'm thinking in Hilltop, you might not be in the same literal building, but all the others you are. There's only one other teacher. You teach a great grade. So they're saying instead of one other, I would benefit from having 3 or 4 others.
Yeah.
That's the way to interpret that.
That's
Like
what I'm
the
thinking.
grade level.
Basically, there's 2 grade levels per building. And I'm thinking they're saying if I had
All of them.
4 or 6
Right.
second grade teachers all together, we could be more effective with our teaching and collaboration. Okay. Let's see. did we talk about
Space
this already?
room.
You were.
Going into that, yeah.
Okay, does the space or room you currently work in support your ability to do your job efficiently and effectively? And there again, we were going for room size, lighting, the furniture in your room, finishes, the cabinetry, marker boards, HVAC. Again, we got pretty strong down here, they're saying does not support. And we got, there again, you're gonna see comments we typed up that were handwritten then. A lot of them said HVAC was some of the bigger issues in their building. Maybe they're hot, cold, moist, too hot, too humid.
Now, there's this poor woman here who says she has to empty a bucket every day. Wait, sorry, I just read that. Moisture, air quality, I need to empty a 1 gallon bucket of water from my room at least twice a day. Vermont.
That is moist. Okay, my feeling, my students and I feel safe in our current building. There again, I'm kind of surprised at this answer. I thought that everybody would not feel safe because there's not safe and secure entryways. Particularly like Hilltop, there's all the buildings around. I was very surprised. I thought we would be very strong where people did not feel safe in the buildings, but actually it's fairly well contributed. So people are fairly comfortable in your buildings, which is really good. Okay, lastly, the overall aesthetics, your building are inviting and promote an exciting place to learn and work from itself. Where again, most of the people say they disagree with that statement.
That's not higher.
So anyway, that's kind of it in a nutshell. You can take those home and review those. There's ones for each one of the 3 schools. But me looking through them, they all very, very similar. I didn't see big differences in between the 3 buildings. And this pretty much summarizes, I think, the results of that. So I think it's all kind of interesting. I always think it's good to get input from people that are actually working in the spaces and using the building. Instead of architects or people from the outside trying to tell you what you need and how to use your space. Okay.
Great.
6 o'clock.
Okay. So this is now the start, quick shot of what we're going to do tomorrow's meeting, just to give you a little heads up. Tomorrow's meeting, we're looking at enrollments, demographics, and then ideal grade configurations. So the topic of tomorrow's meeting. So the first thing we're going to go through is this is just some general information that I think is helpful. You know, it's got population, it's got your percentage population under 5, 18, housing. Let's see what I can hear this. But this is interesting. There again, this kind of says a lot about your district. Families with children, you know, 78% of the housing, 78% have children or their family. This is another thing that I think is interesting. And
78%.
No, that's high.
That's awfully high.
As children, it doesn't necessarily mean school age, I guess.
no, it just means children.
Right, but I think it's a little higher than we've seen in the past. I think it's higher than we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
Way high.
40%. The other thing I think is interesting is housing units, you know, there's basically 3,200 houses that you're drawing from. Single family homes, 2,881. Condos and townhomes, very few, 178. Rental units, they're again, not very many, 347. So some of these facts that, and we're going to go into this a little more in depth tomorrow, but I think what a lot of these things lead to is it tells you how steady that your district is. There are a lot of districts that have lots of land area to be built on, or they're very transit, or they have lots and lot of rental areas where people are moving in and out. But basically all your statistics show that you're really very, very constant, and very level in all your. people that are moving here or staying here, kids are going through the district, not a lot of turnover. So your enrollment and your demographics is actually a fairly easy thing to look at here. This is just, there again, kind of the eyeball. So what this shows is, there again, you remember the zoning map that we looked at?
10 years.
So there's higher density areas within your district. And why I said with higher density is because those by zoning can have smaller yards. Okay, so you get more houses per acre or more houses per unit on it. So all the dark blue areas are the residences with the smallest yards. So they're closer together, more people are located in these darker areas. Then as you go out, there's a medium density, which is this medium side, medium blue color. And then as you get out in here, these lots are bigger, thus less people out into these areas. And then there's finally an area out here where the largest of the sites are, and you would have the less density. So it's really just a visual to show, probably, if you just use logic, probably most of your people or most of your students or a lot of your students are coming from the eastern part of your district. There again, the gray stuff that we see here, these are either parks, this is the golf course, the park, your school, of course, you can't, there's no population, there's some retail kind of stuff down through there, no housing, so we've taken those out.
To what extent have we or will we bring in, say, city administrators and have their input, maybe in terms of if they have objectives, priorities? You pointed out maybe our rental housing is low, mixed use housing, things of that nature. If they have objectives where they'd like to see the city go and how that might factor in what we do in terms of our land choices. Do they have a voice in the process, or will they later?
Yeah, we have one of the division in education focus group is set up with the city leadership. And so that will begin that process, and yes, they'll definitely be connected to these conversations.
One more. When we looked at the state standards for square footage, recommended class size, things of that nature, did those standards come about pre-COVID?
Yes.
Do we anticipate any adjustments, changes, suggestions in terms of how we might build a building that would better accommodate a response?
Great question. I will tell you that the state moves very, very slowly. And we've asked the question to the OFCC, because we have OFCC projects, and every district asks that, are we going to be doing remote or online learning and all that type? Right now, the state says no, they're not going to change their template yet. They think it's too early to jump and make that change. I'm guessing they're going to give it a good 5 years at least to let it roll out and see what happens with online learning and that kind of thing. They just don't react that quickly.
Sure. Yeah.
Was your question also about maybe social distancing?
Sure. That
Right.
being able
Yeah.
to spread out.
Changing the square
class
footage stuff,
sizes.
as opposed
Yeah.
to even maybe just having less students because they're working remotely.
They have not so far.
Okay.
They're sticking with their template.
Mhm.
I don't think there's been any changes in the works that I know of.
Is there anything that you've seen independent of state recommendations that would allow us to be, I guess, more nimble and allow for students to maintain a presence in the school, as opposed to having to go remote? Things that we could do in terms of structure or devices, anything that would allow us to kind of modify classrooms kind of at a moment's notice?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we can do. I mean, there's lots of more outdoors type spaces now, lots of connected learning. Certainly the HVAC systems and all that kind of stuff have been improved. Really a lot more open areas. Yeah, there are things that are being done and people are very aware of the.
And some districts are, instead of having fixed casework that's attached, are using mobile pieces, so you can reconfigure classrooms as different types of educational spaces, and not just classrooms, but any of their spaces. Having the flexibility to reconfigure and
Yeah.
change them around as needed is key as well.
I would imagine we're gonna hear quite a bit about that during the different envisioning sessions.
Yeah.
It's gonna come in a number of different ways from different parent groups, or students, or
Sure.
teacher, yeah.
Okay. Right. So that was kind of the demographic portion of it in a nutshell. So this is the enrollment trends. And we looked at this two different ways, and we've got numbers from Rhonda provided us with numbers that she had, and plus there was numbers that came from. There was an actual enrollment study that was done a number of years ago, so we combine all those numbers to try to give us as many as we can. Really, what this chart is showing is these are graduation years, okay? And you gotta read down this way. So in 2013, they're starting kindergarten with 99 and first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth. So it reads down, but really what, lots of numbers here, but really what to look at is these numbers across the bottom. And this is really what the change is from first grade to graduation in all your classes. There again, surprising, to me, surprising, because most schools we work with, the numbers decrease as they get older and graduate. Your numbers all increase, basically all the way across the board. Basically, you pick up about 30 kids roughly from first grade to seniors, graduation. Basically, typically for how many years, all the way down through here, it's basically all the same. So your district's very different from what we see on typical public school. So just something interesting there again is we're trying to forecast what's going to happen in the district, what could happen in the future. You got to kind of look at these numbers and feel like you're pretty stable because all these numbers are pretty stable. Okay, our next chart. There again, this chart then reads basically over this, down this way. So if you look at the school year 2009, K first, second, third, or it has the number of students in each school year. There again, if you just look at the bottom line, this is basically the number of kids in each school year that you had either in your school or graduated in your school district. So there again, you're right around, it fluctuates a little bit between, you get close to 2,000, in 2019, you had like 2,000 kids, but most of the time you're 1925, 1950, right through there. And it's pretty darn stable all the way out. So there again, looking at enrollment and your future is fairly easy because I don't see that it's going to change. If you don't have more land, you have set houses, demographics show people are kind of staying. So I think you're in good shape that way. Okay, the last thing that we're going to do at tomorrow's meeting, and a big part of that meeting is we want to look at grade configurations. And so what we've done here is this is your current grade configuration, the way your district's set up now. And then we have 5 other possible grade configurations. And then I'd like you to look at these and make sure that you are liking these before we roll these out. But anyway, we have those, and then what we do is we look at all the things that are affected by the grade configurations. And what we want to do then is we're as a group, as a committee, we're going to give each one of those kind of a score of how they are, and then we're going to come with, these are all going to line and add as they come down, and then there's going to be basically a score at the bottom. And I think it helps, and what we've done is we've broken these down into these are all the things that we feel affect students. These are things that affect educators or teachers. These are physical costs that I'm just interested in, and then we have others over here. So
what I love about the way you do this is, I mean, you'll give us 5 to start with tomorrow, but
Yep.
you know, in my experience, you know, the conversation will drive what that looks like at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, we may have incredible dialogue and we may scrap those 5 and get 5 new ones
Right.
by the end of the day,
Yeah.
which is what I love about how this works. To your point, Toya, like, I mean, you kind of got to start somewhere. You know, you can't just throw, you know, a bunch of chart papers on the wall and say, okay, what do you guys want to do? You kind of have to start somewhere. And I love this framework. But I'm super excited to see how the committee works through these choices and how that starts to take shape, because I do think that, you know, the process is proven that good solutions will rise to the top.
Yeah.
Right, through community voice, and so I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and there again, the grade configuration really drives the master plan too. I mean, you have to know what students you want in what buildings and those type of things. So there again, this is kind of a first piece of looking at that as we go through. I will say that we tried to put grade configurations on here that we thought were possibilities for your district. We did not put, they're all here at the end, a K-12 building. I don't see where you put it, or how you could possibly do a K-12 building in your district. So we did not put that kind of information on there. We did not throw that out as an option, which we would a lot if we were doing it in another district where they had land to do things and had all those options. It's kind of fun then to do a really wide range of K-12 all the way down the building for each grade level or whatever, you know. So anyway, we've tried to zero in on what we think is a possibility for your district, feasible, and then move on back. So that's tomorrow, and that's going to be interesting how that comes out. Okay, my last thing I'll get to is this is kind of the outline for our educational visioning that we talked about. These are the big meetings that we have kind of all day with the different groups.
Which is next week.
We get next week. We've got to practice that but we're going to run through and make sure we have all our ducks in a row. So we're doing the right thing. But the reality is what we want to do is we're going to do a real quick introduction. Tim's going to talk about the strategic plan that's already been put in place by the district, so people have an understanding of that. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the general information that I just kind of went through with you all. Spend about 5 minutes on that, some general facts, maybe some of the comparison things, high level stuff. We're again going to talk about goals for the educational visioning. You know, what do we want to get out of this? What do we want to get out of this committee? What do we want to get out of this meeting? Then we have a video, and you all might want to go home and you can pull this up on YouTube and you can look at this. It says, the name of it is Did You Know Video. And it's a 4-minute video and it rolls really fast. But what it does is it's showing how fast the world is changing. You know, it goes through all different things. It goes through technology. It shows how fast, you know, how computer systems have progressed. I mean, it just goes through all different things. And what it's pointing out, it really makes you think is, hey, the world is really changing. And the way that we need to educate our students, we need to be looking at that. We need to educate our students to be prepared for the changes in the world and to keep up with what's happening. So it's a really neat little video just to really get you thinking. You might want to go home and pull it up and look at it. It's really interesting. So we'll do that. Then we'll talk about the future of education. You know, after watching this video, then we talk about, well, how's that going to affect our students? You know, and then how's it going to affect our teachers and how is it going to affect the way that they teach their students? From there, I'd like to break out into some small groups, you know, maybe 4 or 5 people at a table. And then we'll just have a couple of questions that we would like to get some responses on from them. And then we'll kind of come back, maybe do a little scenario of what we came up with there. And we'll have some takeaways from that meeting and then basically adjourn. So that's kind of what we're thinking for the educational visioning portion. Does that make sense to everybody?
The blocks list 90 minutes of time with some time in between each one. The overall time said 55 minutes.
Right.
What you define. I love that gives you space and time to iterate and regroup and all that. Is there any way that the 20 minutes can be expanded to be a little bit more than 1/3 of the time?
For the questions, we remember.
The people will be talking with each other for 20 minutes.
Oh, this is the portion right here? Absolutely.
I don't have a voice to say that's what it should be. I'm not even on the committee. I was just curious about if you have time available, how might they get to that? You might find as you get into it that it's not necessary or that it is, but it feels like you have time to expand it.
Yeah.
That's true. What happened, I think.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
This is the last.
At the screen.
I think we're done anyway.
The questions in the visioning session that you're gonna spend the 20 minutes or longer on. Are you asking them to think of those questions through the lens of physical space that the kids are in, or are there any building questions, or is it really this?
No, it's really geared towards educating. And it's not really geared towards your buildings at all at this point. It's really trying to understand what people's thoughts are on how are we going to educate students in the future, what do they need to be prepared for. You know, are teachers going to be more monitors? Are they going to still be teachers? Are they going to be helpers? You know, what I think that's kind of what we're trying to get at, is because that then drives how your building has to be set up. You know, I think you have to understand how you want to educate, and then you have to design the building to that, so that the building functions to support your educational theories or how you want to do that. So there again, I think, you know, if everybody says, you know, what comes out of this is everybody's like, you know, collaboration. Our kids need to learn to collaborate and work with others, and we want more of an open type education. Well, your little squared in rooms aren't right to fit that need.
I think it'll be really important to make sure that people do step out of their current reality at some point in that conversation, because I think it's so easy to answer questions from your current reality. So that will be important.
Well, to Kara's point, and your point, it may be that they come in with a certain view, given what they think the conversation is about. Some understanding as you ask that portion of it, you'll frame their mind the way you want them to think. Because otherwise they'll think way either they came in or what they think their answer is supposed to be.
Yes.
So that'll be important.
And I really think to move the little film clip, I still think
Yeah.
that sets it up.
Yeah.
It really gets you like, whoa, really?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
We were talking about that during the strategic planning session about how much more rapidly things have changed.
Yeah.
You know, so it was 20 years ago when no change, it was 10 and now it's 2, and just how we're going to ensure, you know. As we look at the buildings and we say, wow, 1954, it was upgraded in 1970. No wonder it's smaller than it should be, or it's not kept with the times. Really, one of the questions is how we're doing the educating, you know, and how that keeps, you know, kind of with the times as well. So
Yeah. I like that because then it says on 8B, like you go through all of that and then it's like, are your current places ready for that? Like everything you're talking about, then it leads you into that. You're looking at the question. But right, it's very standard, 1950s standard fitting. That's what's right.
And sometimes we do a little history of education too. What's happening in the world kind of drove the way schools were built. I mean, if you think of the Industrial Revolution, where, you know, everything was an assembly line, well, that's the way they were educating kids too. They were all, you know, a double loaded corridor, and you came in a first grade in this room and you moved down the hall and you were going out that door, you know. It was kind of the science. It really is interesting if you think back on how things that are happening in the world and world history affected the way education works and the way buildings were designed. So again, we're trying to look out out into the future.
Yeah, just like, yeah, how well teachers and students are currently doing and like the potential of what could happen. Like a facility change. Exciting.
A quick land question on the topography map for Hilltop Elementary. There's some numbers where the Hilltop Park currently is. And it looks a lot flatter just in terms of the elevation change. It's much more minimal. Is there any kind of accounting for that space in terms of its potential? I know it's obviously the city's property currently, but just in terms of size, what would be possible as a pretty big tract of land sitting almost perfectly center in the community, but just to have something to, assess that property with?
We've already had some conversation on that with the city. We actually got a drawing from their engineer on where the water lines run.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, that is a possibility. We're looking at all different kind of possibilities. And you're right, that is a possible piece of land where possibly something could happen.
Okay. It's on the radar.
It's on the radar, yeah. Yeah, we've already kind of started looking at that.
Okay. Thank you.
Exciting.
Thanks, Jen.
Yeah,
Great.
Well, thank you very much for that. We will be excited to hear what comes up in the next round.
Can you do an?
I'm not.
I think we'll probably be adding some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Make sure that they're all, because they're all different. Yeah.
Is that your team? Yeah, well, can I keep it? Yeah. I just wanted to cover that, I didn't know that was your Tuesday. We don't.
We do not.
It's different.
I'll make sure. They're all-
All right, so we do not have any recognition of the public. So I'm going to move on to the next presentation because we do have for a long year. Who's going to bring us up to date. I remind everyone she is our representative on the school board at Scarlet. I'm sorry, Great Oaks. I always want to call it just Scarlet.
I've written down my notes. Still in November.
Yes.
A little more background on who I am. Toya Wall, really great to be here. That was an exciting presentation. I served on the CAC Philippines Committee and everyone on the committee. So looking forward to talking to you tomorrow and really caught up. I missed it. But okay, so I've been in a Wyoming resident for about 2.5 years. I live on Ritchie with my partner and my soon-to-be 5-year-old. She's not a part of the district yet, but we are gearing up for February to enroll. It's exciting. We're like really getting it pumped about like the kindergarten phase of her life. So I am on my second term of the Community Advisory Committee for Wyoming City Schools, and it's been a really great experience. I'm serving on the gifted services study this year, which I knew nothing about going in, but I'm really excited to engage in that work as well. And then professionally, I work in education grant making. So I work with well-resourced organizations, so nonprofits, foundations, and I help them strategically deploy their charitable resources toward education-related initiatives. So very much in the realm of what we all do here. But I'm here today because I serve as a member of the board of directors for Great Oaks Career Campuses. I'm about 4 months into my 3-year term. It's a public school district offering career and technical training for both high school students and adults. We have 4 campuses as well as programs in over 25 area schools. And annually, we serve thousands of high school students preparing for careers in college, as well as adults seeking training and certification to begin a new career or advance in their current one. We have 36 affiliate school districts, Wyoming obviously being one. And tonight I'm going to just provide a brief update. I won't be very long. The first thing on my list is Great Oaks President and CEO Harry Snyder. He recently
presented on his 2022-23 strategies to fulfill the responsibilities outlined in the Ohio Standards of Superintendents. There were 3 key strategic areas of focus that Harry outlined for the district, and I wanted to share those tonight because I think they'll sound very familiar because they're not a far cry from our strategic priorities, and I think it's really great to be able to kind of draw those connections. So the first strategy focuses on student achievement and exceptional engagement. This means affirming that every student's journey is unique, and through purposeful engagement, we can forge educational and career paths that lead to student success. So I think a lot about our focus on that personalized learning. The second strategy focuses on exceptional culture and exceptional collaboration. This means fostering a collaborative culture that recognizes and celebrates each person's ability to contribute to an exceptional educational experience. And then finally, the third strategy focuses on safety and facilities. This means ensuring safe, best-in-class learning environments that provide the latest educational tools and technology to enhance the potential of each student. We heard a little bit about that tonight in our, as we were listening to the architects. Great Oaks has recently completed some renovations on their buildings to secure the entrances. So I was really excited to see that we're getting some of that done, and also was able to tour some of their new learning spaces where they've re-equipped our dental areas, as a lot of the areas in our health sciences programs. That's all really exciting for our students. Also excited to share that Great Oaks continues to excel as a district in terms of state outcomes. They received an overall grade of an A from the Ohio Department of Education on the latest Ohio School Report Card. We're going to convert to the new system next year. More specifically, we received a B in achievement, an A in graduation rates, A in career post-secondary readiness, and an A in post-program outcomes. So I think it's really a testament to all of the hard work and dedication of the staff and students there, and teachers, and all of the affiliate school districts that come together. In terms of enrollment for the 22-23 school year, Great Oaks started out our school year at approximately 2,882 students. Almost 1,700 of those students are juniors entering into one of the 4 campuses. That's nearly an 11% increase compared to the number of juniors that entered Great Oaks campuses in 2018. As many of you probably know, Wyoming, we historically make up a pretty small share of Great Oaks students, approximately 3.5% to 4% of total 11th grade enrollment. That's been pretty consistent over the last several years. That's like 5-6 students that are actually on campus. And some of the top career tracks in terms of enrollment are in the health sciences field and in the information technology fields. And then finally, we have a new application process that is being implemented for the 23-24 school year. The 23-24 career catalog is now available for prospective students and their families. Recently, career specialists from all of our 4 campuses began visiting all of the affiliate schools to make presentations and distribute catalogs. I think has it already happened? Okay, that's already happened in Wyoming. I don't know if you have all gotten to see those catalogs, but they're pretty impressive. All of the opportunities that are listed there. I serve on the Human Resources Committee, and I'm always really impressed with all of the extracurricular activities that are offered for the students, all of the employer partnerships that they manage to engage with every month, and lots of opportunities for students who have different needs, like students with intellectual and different physical abilities. So yeah, that's my recap. I couldn't be more thrilled and continuing to work with them. I'm learning a lot. It dovetails a lot with some of the work that I do on the career and technical side professionally. So that's my update.
Great, thank you very much, Leah. I really appreciate it. Does that sound like the update you typically get from That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wondering what's the next.
Well, you're very right. We traditionally don't send large numbers.
Yeah.
So it's nice to know what they are offering and what is available and how successful they are.
We had a meeting where we pulled together a bunch of folks at Wyoming to just talk about like that relationship between the Wyoming district and Great Oaks and some of the positive things, some of the challenges. And I think one of the big goals coming out of that meeting was just to establish a more regular meeting cadence, which I think we've been able to do. So.
And let us know, we're trying to make sure we're letting our students know early on what opportunities are available so they can take advantage of them when the time is right.
Someone serving on the gifted services study with me, I'm going to forget his name, but he very interested in Great Oaks and internship opportunities. Just how do you leverage their employer connections for students, gifted students here at Wyoming? So I think that's a really interesting connection.
I was stopped by someone just randomly. They didn't know that I was still on the school board. But we were just having a conversation. I was like, "Are you still on the school board?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know if I can tell you." And he was saying that his son, who did very well in Wyoming district, I think is maybe going there full time, primarily there. And he just talked about the experience for his son, who probably isn't a college track person. I'm not saying that everyone who goes there is, but just the different experience that he has there, and just the benefit for him. And it is a fit for his child. He has 3. 2 of them finished here, and 1 of them was there. And it worked out, because they were different from each other. So I was curious. You mentioned how we were talking, what level phase for people to see what it is, and get a chance to know if it's right for them. And so that was encouraging for me to hear tonight. I don't know how we think about what our goals are relative to Great Oaks. We have you on the board. We had someone there before, Jeannie or other. They've already decided this or determined or know this much better than me. And we don't have to talk it today, but I'm curious as we think about, you talk about relationships and cadence of interactions. I'm curious to think about the 3 years that you're going to be there. What are goals that we have, about your presence there and how that impacts us and how that impacts them. As maybe we have a next update, for me, it'd be something I'd be curious to understand in more detail.
I think we've had a long history of sometimes a board, one of us also serves on that board. We've also had members of the community serve on the board. Sometimes it's someone who's very involved in business and wants to be involved in something that hooks business with education. So usually it's someone who has an interest who goes to that position. I think one of the other things we're always interested in is we do help finance. So we do want to keep ourselves up to date on what the financial situation, the 5-year forecast that Great Oaks.
Oh, sure. Okay. Okay, those are great for the next update. Anything else? I mean, and your question, Ilya, I feel like is a question for this group. And it's a question that I have in terms of my role there as I'm navigating, figuring out what's to be.
If I were you, I would wonder, what does success look like? And how do I assure on behalf of this community that you're a part of that we're able to get that?
Yeah, and then that was part of why we met. We had that exact same discussion. Some of the things that came up was issues of isolation. So students who are learning at Great Oaks, but maybe don't feel as connected to any place, and how do you shore that up? Talked about curriculum and the need to ensure that it's aligned, that students aren't going there and sort of working on things that they've sort of already worked on. And so I think one of the starting points was that establishing that connection and making some.
Sounds
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. We have yet another presentation. We're just.
Can I go with this one?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're going to need a break before we get started. And take a little bit. Yeah. Want to take a quick break? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to get your water?
Water? Did you say water?
Okay.
I can grab you some water.
Yeah. I don't know if you were 5 liters.
I don't know. Well, they've been there.
We don't have to get on.
The camera running over the house. Can we press pause on the, or?
I don't know.
Oh, I don't think,
I don't think you
I
can.
don't think we can unless we like adjourn and then go back.
Hard ass. People don't have to sit there and
Not sure.
I don't think you can,
watch us sit there.
yeah. I don't know, because I think it shows the different times, so we'll have to look at that. We
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you doing a presentation up here? Okay, so then we'll move again.
Thank you. And I'm gonna stay here if that's okay, just so I
You
can
wanna-
navigate from here. No, I can do it from here. Thank you.
Very squished in on this side. Did I hear Toya say there's a 10% increase in student, not from Wyoming, but.
I remember an
11% increase in juniors, That's a pretty big jump.
That's a very good one.
That's significant.
Wow.
You know, their programs are very successful and very robust.
Yes.
If that, you know, if that's something that you're looking for, it really is a great opportunity for some students.
Oh, absolutely. And there are opportunities to make it work with your home school. So you can still be on the football team. Whatever you would like to do. Here tomorrow at the facilities meeting, would you just ask about that one number about number of households?
With children.
It's so incredibly large.
Here's the other thing. I don't
Increased.
know if I got the data, but if somebody asked me, how many children do you have? I would put 3.
Well,
If they asked me,
yeah.
how many children do you have living at home? I would say 1. You know, like,
Right.
a lot of that is.
Well, we can get some clarity around the
Mhm.
question that generates that,
Right.
like the
We're-
specifics.
We're thinking if it was census data, then you
Yeah.
would have said 3.
I'm sure that's where they got.
And so then we
They
are
didn't survey
talking
the
from,
communities.
We're talking from 0 to 22 or 23 and that would make some sense.
I would.
But it was so much different from what we have normally used as our data.
It's a very different question.
Okay. Well, that would be nice to know because that would,
I don't think that renter number was high.
the what
Maybe I've
number?
just never seen it.
The
before.
renter number.
374.
3,
Maybe I've just never
Was it
seen
that
I
high?
didn't have it.
was it in the 300s? Well, and I know the city considers,
Well.
but the city is concerned that we don't have enough rental. So,
Point.
so I don't know.
I am gonna get my classes. No, I actually meant to get them, but I forgot.
Really?
We're gonna hold on to this, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Bring-
there
bring
are
that to the
homes
meeting.
being rented and there are condos being rented in the Rolling Hills area, but I still don't quite see 400.
Oh.
All right.
One of each, I don't know, I feel like when I sent it out, I
It's not me
think it was John.
Yeah.
for facilities.
Yeah,
Are you
'cause Billy was
facilities?
First. Well, and I sent it a bit ago, right? Just
I'm in the spring.
I'm
pretty sure.
I was able to the first, not the second person. Is there another date?
Well, I
There is
could do the
another
December one.
Okay.
I couldn't do. I could look at my email.
There was another meeting in December.
Right. Because we will want to have our second person there.
Nor would be that you can't run like 1 million. They look like wild babies.
There's one December 8th and then there's one December 20th.
Okay, so John's doing tomorrow. Heather's doing December
8th and 20th.
Yes? We're just getting the facilities committee. We're making sure our second person is there.
Well, that's the.
It might be, what are the census questions, they might define this person's over 18.
Sure, so just separate.
household check board, but then we should be able to pull out.
Yeah.
Under five.
Under five, right.
Thought it was important.
Yeah, but just quickly, but I inform you.
Right.
That makes sense.
Sometimes you all don't.
Right, right.
Yeah, you
We
would
don't-
think. And in fact, it's more down than it is up.
Yeah. And those are.
Right, I think we'll move on then
Feedback on.
with a 5-year I can't make a financial report.
Thank you, Jeannie. Big crowd here as always. 5-year forecast update. Thank you, Tracy, for coming.
People watching online.
Yes, we're on.
And you all can follow along with the 5-year forecast document if you're interested. But we're just going to hit the highlights. Most of you know that November is the time of year that all Ohio public school districts are required to review and adopt their 5-year forecast. It's a requirement of Ohio law. And it includes 3 years of our historical data and 5 years of projections. So the current fiscal year that we're in fiscal year 23, and then an additional 4 fiscal years. It's important to remember that this is a general fund only report. And so when we think about the many other funds that the district uses to run our operations, for example, it doesn't include our permanent improvement fund. So even though that's voted millage, none of those expenditures are included in this forecast. Same with our bond retirement fund, also voted millage, not reflected. So the 5-year forecast across Ohio is a general fund only document for all Ohio public schools. Again, important to remember that we are forecasting a reliable trend, and that's always challenging under normal circumstances. But coming out of the pandemic, it's continued to be more and more difficult. So we are modeling based on the data that we have available, and then we'll talk about the assumptions and where we have areas of maybe more uncertainty than others. And so we like to start with revenue. And when we think about how the 5-year forecast, the document itself is shaped, we start with where the money comes from, and then we move on to how we spend our resources. So we'll start with revenue. And our most material source of revenue is real estate taxes. About 40% of our general fund revenue comes from real estate. And you can see that bottom pie chart, 95% of our tax base is residential. That will not surprise anyone who looks around the community. Of course, we have a very small commercial industrial tax base, about 3%, and an even smaller public utility tax base at 2%. You will see that the forecasted amounts there, the top chart at the top, not forecasting a ton of growth there, because what we know about property taxes and real estate is that once you pass a property tax levy, which our last levy was passed in May of 2017, an 8 mil operating levy, also a 1.5 mil PI levy, but remember, we don't put the permanent improvement fund in this forecast, general fund only. So 8 mils passed in May of 2017. Without any new operating levy in this forecast, there's no growth in that bar chart. Okay. It's important to remember, though, that we will see increases in values during our next cycle of reappraisal. Anybody want to guess what values are going to do? Are they going to go up or down, just based on what we know about home prices here recently? Are values going to go up or down? Up. And so I forecasted an increase in property values. And so remember, Ohio law provides that when property values go up, the millage rate goes down, because you're not allowed to collect more than the original levy was intended to collect. So this forecast does assume property tax growth, and you'll see that next year during reappraisal, I'm projecting some pretty material growth, and you can see it forecasted there. But you can also see then the millage rate going down because of the way that House Bill 920 impacts effective millage rate in Ohio. I know that property tax millage is everybody's favorite topic. So real estate taxes are most material source of revenue. We're going to move on to our second most material source of revenue. I'm going to go back to this pie chart. So property tax at 40%, income tax at 32%. So we're 72% local funded. Okay, that's important to remember. Just if you kind of just think about the structure of our revenue. Real estate taxes at 40%, balanced with income tax at 32%, so 72% locally funded. And that bar chart looks a little different than the property tax chart. because there's no protection, so to speak, in the way that, there's protection in the way Ohio millage structure works. So there are two income taxes that have been passed in Wyoming, one in 1989 and then a second one in 1994. So we are currently collecting 1.25% income tax on total income. If the law has since changed, so there are some districts now who are levying or putting on the ballot an income tax, and school districts now have the option to run an earned income tax. That wasn't an option back when ours were passed. So ours are the income tax. The school income tax here is on total income. The difference is being mostly pension income would be the difference. So school districts are passing those now, and they decide you can still have the option. You can do all income or earned. But the option would be that, it's earned income versus pension income is the biggest exception. So, we've certainly seen some growth in this line item, which has helped our financial stability, but we've also seen some volatility in this line item. So if you look just at that kind of the 22-year average, historical average, our average growth over those years is about 3.19%. We have had some recent anomalies coming out of COVID, fiscal year 21. We actually saw a 0.74% decline. Less than 1% is about as close to a flat line as you can get. And we were actually pretty happy with that because coming out of COVID, we were actually forecasting a 5% decline just due to real uncertainty about what was happening in the Ohio economy at the time. So about a flat line in 21, did see we had then forecasted, again, coming out of COVID with much uncertainty, we've been forecasting 1.5% growth, actually realized about 10% growth. So we saw a really healthy rebound in our income tax collection for fiscal year 22. So far, through half of our collection, we've received 2 of our 4 payments. We've seen a 16% growth, but we have seen the first 2 payments are normally the largest generators of that growth. The second half of the fiscal year normally backs off a little bit. So we have in this forecasted for this year, a 6% increase, and then modeled out in the future of 3%. We had been, if you remember, we'd been hovering around 2.5, but because of these recent increases, we adjusted it up to 3. I say that also, I feel like it's important to follow that with, we are continuing to monitor this line item very, very carefully. My friends who are on finance committee know that every time we have a payment, we spend an hour or so talking, kind of diving into the details and the components of our income tax collection, because it's very material to our forecast. And the volatility is something that, should it take a turn one way or the other, it would have an impact on our cash balance, and it would have a material impact on our cash balance. And so we also know that there are lots of economic factors that are happening in the world, in our country, in our state. There's so much going on that could influence this that really is beyond our control. Also, taxpayer behavior is beyond our control. So, folks make decisions about investments or buying and selling companies or changing jobs. And so, all of that taxpayer behavior happens, all of the state and local and national economy, all of those factors are influencing how this collection takes shape. And so I just feel like it's important to say that, because that would absolutely influence the way that this curve takes shape over the next few years.
Could you just, I always like when you reiterate or go into tiny detail right where your cursor was. I think the biggest question I get, that then I always ask you, so I like to hear you say it again, is the 1.25 of like the backup past, because I think some people, it's just confusing for people in the community. Sometimes they're like, why am I paying on 1.25 school tax? What is that? And then all the time for me, it's like, I love to hear it a million times.
Sure.
I think I get it, but I like to hear you say
Sure.
it.
And so, school districts, the tax structure in Ohio is that school districts had property taxes, cities had income taxes, counties had sales tax. Okay, that's sort of the overall tax structure in Ohio. And so at some point, the law was changed and said, okay, school districts can levy, put to your voters and ask for support of a school district income tax. It does help to diversify your tax base, because what did we know about property taxes? There's no growth, right? Despite the fact that property values in this community could double, and we would still not see any additional revenue because of the way that Ohio law requires that millage rate to drop. I know effective millage rate, again, is everybody's least favorite topic, but values go up, the millage rate has to go down, because Ohio law says that when you pass a property tax, you're limited from the collection from that issue. No matter how much property values go up, you cannot generate additional revenue. So I think it was fairly wise for the board back in 89 and again in 94 to say, you know what, it would be helpful for our revenue structure to maybe diversify our revenue stream. And so that this has helped us quite a bit. And so as a voter, when you're thinking about this, you think, okay, I could be paying this property tax, or I could be paying this income tax. And so at some point it made sense to our voters to approve that and the diversification of that and how they pay it. Any other questions? I mean, they're very different. But again, important to know that combined together, about 72% local funded. Right. So property tax, the most material, income tax, the second most. We are creeping up there, though. I mean, as we continue to see growth, healthy growth in our income tax, I mean, it's continuing to creep up. A few years ago, it was maybe 28, 29%, and now it's continuing to grow a little more. Part of that is because of the next factor, which is state funding, which has not continued to grow. And so state funding is about 20% of our total revenue. You might have heard that there was a new fair school funding plan. It was debated for a couple of years, passed by the Ohio legislature. Year 1 was last year. Year 2 is this year. This is the second year of the biennium. The state budgets in 2-year cycles. So the biennium budget cycle, it is currently in the models being phased in. But really, what our constituents need to know about this is the new fair school funding plan is not generating additional state funding for Wyoming city schools. In fact, this year we are forecasted to receive $5.8 million. That number looks eerily similar to the amount of state funding we received in fiscal year 19. In fact, just a bit shy. So, 2 biennium budgets ago, 4 years ago, we were receiving more in state funding than we were slated to get in the new model. And so interesting just to kind of pay attention to what has happened over the past few years. This is another line item that we took a hit during COVID. If you remember, COVID hit and we shut down in March of 2020. It was maybe 30 to 45 days after that the state actually cut our funding 3/4 of the way through the school year. And which was, really a big deal. Like that just doesn't happen. Right. And so you can see that reduction. And then we saw, a little bit of a rebound, but that rebound in 21 isn't necessarily funding growth. It's just the rebound from the cut of the year before. Right. And so, that's why it's important that you almost have to kind of go back to fiscal year 19. You kind of have to go back to pre-COVID levels to see where you land in the funding formula compared to the previous formula. You kind of have to box out those COVID years because the state, again, same reason that we were forecasting uncertainty in our income tax, they were forecasting uncertainty and had to pull back a little bit. And so the moral of the story here is 20% of our overall revenue stream, not forecasting any growth at all over the life of this forecast. As we continue to lobby and advocate through this next biennium budget cycle, I honestly think that we're just really trying to hang on to the $5.8 million that we have, make sure that it's not diverted to school choice. That really is our number one effort over the next 6 to 7 months when the new biennium budget hits on July 1st.
Right.
Okay. Maybe worth mentioning that in the new fair school funding plan that there are some restricted funds. So although we were receiving the same amount of money, in fact, a little bit less, we're required to spend that money in a certain way. So that's new. And that's kind of that little green section of the graph. Not super material for us, but maybe just worth mentioning that as we sort of move along, we get less money, more mandates. Okay, which is kind of the moral of the story of state funding.
What do those things have to go to?
So a big chunk of that, a few years ago, we sort of got a dump of money that was for wellness, and it was on top of our regular allocation. Well, they abandoned that model and said, hey, we're just going to slide this into your state allocation, and you're still required to spend it on those funds. There's a gifted allocation. There's an ESL, an English as a second language allocation. We get such small amounts of all of those little pieces that we really have no trouble proving or documenting or substantiating that we're spending those funds on those programs, because we were doing that anyway. But it's just, I'm a local control gal. And so I'm always opposed to less money and more mandates. It's just kind of in my nature. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to this main graph. We've kind of hit the highlights of revenue. Okay, we do have a few small other little pieces. Real estate tax, most material at 40%, then income tax at 32%, state funding 20%, not going to grow, forecasted to stay flatline. About 4.5% for property tax allocation. That's more commonly known as homestead and rollback. So the state pays a portion of your property taxes, either 10% or 2.5% if you qualify for those homestead and rollback exemptions, those programs. So the state gives us that money. And then about 3% other. And other is, our all-day kindergarten tuition. We receive about $350,000 in all-day kindergarten tuition, fees, instructional fees, really a small bucket. So again, mostly real estate taxes and income tax. So if we think about, now we understand where our revenue stream comes from, where does our money come from? What do we do with it when we get it? And so, again, consistent with public school districts across the state, about 81% of our budget we spend on salaries and benefits. And that includes salaries and benefits for about 230 staff members. So including, of course, our teachers and educational aides, the in-house custodial and maintenance staff that we have, and building and district level administration. Again, that benchmark is consistent between 80 and 85% across the state. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, because that's what school districts do. We hire staff members to serve our kids. Okay, so we're not, you've heard me use this example before. We don't, buy raw materials and put them through some sort of process and have a cost of goods sold and make something. That isn't the source of our expenditures. We hire staff members to serve our students and our buildings and our school community. And so we're right on that benchmark. I have forecasted some growth in both of those line items over the next 5 years. We are seeing some inflationary pressure on things like health insurance. So that could be one of those areas that might take a turn, maybe a little higher than what I have forecasted. Also, maybe worth mentioning that this forecast assumes current contributions to both STRS and SCRS. There is, there has been a bill introduced that would increase the district's contribution towards the state teachers retirement system. Hasn't had any movement yet, but again, that would be something that, if it's passed, is not included in this forecast and would have a material impact on our expenditures. So it's important to know what's in there, and sometimes more important to know what's not. Okay, so it assumes current law, current structures, a trend increase on health insurance, but those things are all just kind of taking shape in different ways. So about 80%, 81% on salaries and benefits. The next biggest piece of our expenditures is something that we call purchase services. And I know that's kind of like treasurer lingo. And so I tried to spell some of that out for you and give you some examples. And so I like to think of this similarly. You would think of fixed costs in your home. So, we have to pay utilities. You have to pay utilities in your home. You have to have insurance. We have to have insurance. Some other fixed costs for us are things like transportation. We don't transport our high school students, and we transport our K-8 students outside of 1.25 miles. But so we're not quite at state minimum transportation, because state minimum is 2 miles. But we don't transport. Why am I having trouble with that word? We don't transport.
Run with it.
We don't transport our high school students. So I share that with you because some of these items, in districts, not us, because we haven't been in this position, but if districts find themselves in a position where you have to cut costs, normally something like transportation is the first piece of the dialogue. Right. Well, this district made that choice 40 years ago. Okay, so we at Wyoming has traditionally been a district that focuses their resources on instruction. And so I think that you see that show up in and it's aligned to our strategic plan, but you see it show up in a couple different ways on this forecast. Transportation is one of those things, a difficult decision, but also allows you to prioritize resources towards instruction. Other pieces of things that we like to think about in terms of fixed costs. We don't hire all of our maintenance and custodial staff in-house. we do some, but again, did an analysis and realized that we had some a cost savings opportunity by doing that, outsourcing some of those positions through attrition. So as folks either resign or retire, then we shift over to the contracting those services. That's a purchase service. Same with our technology services. We partnered a few years ago, with a technology team that is best practice, first in class, and serving the education market for many, many years. And so we don't hire those folks in-house. We purchase that service. Substitute procurement is a big one. You can see it up there, about $275,000. We partner with the Hamilton County ESC to procure our subs for us. And so that necessarily wasn't a cost savings measure from the get-go, but ends up being a cost savings measure because we didn't have the capacity to continue to do that in-house. I mean, that's just a really big job. And so they have a system to do that. And then there are some student services there. And then you can see, I tried to break those down for you a little bit, the mandated college credit plus, we don't house a preschool here in Wyoming City Schools. So we contract for preschool services. Folks might be surprised to know that, we pay out about $100,000 for our students to take AP exams. You see that on the revenue side. That was part of miscellaneous revenue, but it shows up on the expense side too. And then we have some students who are placed at other options that are the best place for them to receive their education. So those are things that we purchase. So our utilities, again, a fixed cost in your own home for us, just to give you perspective, about $620,000. Transportation, about $500,000. That's total transportation. Again, you can see some of those dollars there. Just trying to give you a little bit of perspective of things that show up and sort of the threshold that ends up being in this line item. You will see that I have forecasted an increase. I mean, it's a double-digit increase in 2023. Again, we're seeing inflationary pressure on those costs. So the appropriation this year is higher. Also, we've moved some positions from in-house to outsource, more so this year because of attrition and resignations than we have in the past couple of years. And then, there's really not much left when we think about, 81% salaries and benefits, and then 12%, purchase services and those other fixed costs for us. So materials and supplies and capital outlay, and that's kind of the stuff that our staff members use to work with kids, about 3% overall of our budget. We have increased the appropriation this year and through the life of the forecast. That can be attributed mostly to our textbook cycle. I think we realized when we went through the cycle last year that budget number was a little low, and we were having a hard time meeting the request of the textbook adoption committees with the budget that we had allocated. So we increased the allocation a little bit this year, and actually remind me what subject we're doing this year.
ELA.
So language arts is also normally a little bit more expensive of an adoption. So it was important that we, have a more realistic budget number in there for this year than kind of where we started last year. And inflationary growth. Despite the fact that you get the online version of the textbook and maybe not the textbook, it's not any cheaper. So, which is crazy. Continue to monitor that moving forward. And then on the capital outlay side, this is really about our technology plan, both devices and infrastructure. And you can see 22 and 23 are lower cost years, and then 24 through 27 rebound a little bit. 22 and 23, we did use federal COVID money. Some of it was required to be used for some of the technology pieces. And if you think about what was going on during that time, that makes complete total sense. And so we had some of that, absolutely the devices, but we also had the infrastructure in our technology plan. And we just kind of maybe sped up some of those decisions because we had to use those dollars, and it helped prepare both our middle school and our high school. We've been very deliberate about how we're allocating resources to the primary as we embark on a primary facility plan. But that's why the general fund dollars in 22 and 23 on capital outlay are a little bit lower, because those were supplemented by federal COVID relief dollars.
Some of these expenses, for example, the technology purchases, that I assume that's laptops that students get. Of course, the students are getting have a fee assessed as well.
Yes.
Is that a pass through where their fee goes into a general fund and then goes
so
out,
when we looked at that little 3% revenue, the instructional fees that are assigned to the students are part of that revenue, and so that happens at the high school. It does not happen at the middle school and primary. right? Okay.
The same way with AP exams. Like if
Same
they
way with AP,
pay
they pay a
whatever
fee.
for that, it gets, that's a part of that
Yep.
2%.
Yep. So it shows up on the expense side, but it also shows up on the revenue side. It ends up to just being a really small part of our revenue stream. Yeah. And so when we feed all of this in together, it all boils down to what is our cash balance. And so when we think about fiscal year 23, we started fiscal year 23 with about $8.8 million. And we're forecasting to receive total revenue, everything that we talked about on the revenue side, about 28.87 million. Expenses we're forecasting at about 29 million. And so, pretty close to being spot on, but a little bit of a revenue deficit, about $130,000. So forecasting to end fiscal year 23 with about 8.7 million. We know that we're closely monitoring that bottom cash balance line in alignment with our cash balance policy. So our targeted cash balance is
5
5
million.
million. And we use that as a benchmark that says that when we get close to $5 million, we need to make some decisions. We need to say, okay, we either need to raise revenue or we need to reduce expenditures or some combination of both. And so 5 million is our target to make sure that we are having conversations about what's happening on the revenue side and the expense side to impact that cash balance benchmark. And so some caveats at the bottom. We are very carefully watching economic indicators, state and local revenue, state as we move towards the biennium budget cycle. Local revenue, we know that the big trigger on our end is income tax. And again, carefully monitoring how much inflationary pressure we continue to get on our expenditures. We did have some COVID relief dollars. We do still have some left. They are restricted for learning recovery. We're moving through those. We ran some summer programs. We're running some after school programs. We'll run more summer programs next summer. So what's left is restricted. And so we'll continue to move forward with those. They have a September 30th, 2024 expiration date. So we'll continue to spend down those COVID relief dollars in accordance with the restricted funds. At this point, if you look at the cash balance, and using $5 million as the benchmark, that would tell you that perhaps we need to be thinking about new money, collecting new money, full new money sometime in 26.
Mhm.
So that would lead me to believe that we need to be looking for new money in 24 or 25. There is a path to that allows for a phase in, and given our expenditures and the slope of our cash balance, I feel like that might be a good solution for us. We're still a little bit away yet, so we'll continue to watch the second half of income tax, carefully watch the biennium budget cycle, again, pay attention to inflationary pressure on expenditures. And then, we're also, as we saw earlier tonight, we're, working towards a primary facility master plan that, would impact the way that some of these look too, depending on, how the structure of the primary ends up looking. So, looking towards that alignment as we move to the next, kind of 2 to 3 years. But, overall, in the short term, really strong forecast. Given all the caveats that I mentioned. Income tax is always the biggest trigger for us. But, I feel like our assumptions are, I feel good about them. We've debated them at length in finance committee, and I feel pretty good about where we are with them this year. So
I feel like the levy is almost further along. We knew it was coming. I feel like, at least for us, when COVID hit, it was a little more nerve-wracking for a second, right? Of not knowing recovery and not knowing how we would stretch it. Just to look at it.
Well, I think it's important to remember. I mean, we if you look at those two chunks of federal COVID dollars, that's $1.9 million. I mean, those we haven't spent all of that so far, but that helped. I mean, we were able to shift some expenditures, things that we needed to do and wanted to do and were important to the different plans that we had in different buildings.
Correct.
Absolutely supported that cash balance. And allowed us to have a little more financial stability during that time. So it was important.
Well, there was a period too when the state said we're cutting state funding,
Mhm.
which had never, ever, ever, ever happened
Like
before.
when you said that, they cut it and then you didn't know what we were getting.
And we had no idea what to expect.
We had no idea what to expect. No idea what to expect. Yeah, I mean, that happened in May. My
Yeah.
fiscal year ends June 30th.
Right.
I mean, we were 10, 12 through the school year,
Right.
10, 12 through the fiscal year. And they say, hey, you're gonna get a five, I don't remember the percentage now. I think I blocked it. from
Yeah.
memory, but
It was enough that you almost went through a period of, oh, well, we have to write a check to the state.
I think some districts absolutely got that.
Do we have to pay them back?
Yeah. Yeah.
The money we've already spent.
Well, all right, thank you. Are there any other questions or?
No. No,
Because this will show up later in the meeting for our approval.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna move on then, if that's okay.
Yep.
Board of Education reports the Finance Committee did not meet so that we could have that presentation this evening. So we'll talk about Citizens Advisory. Nancy?
Okay.
Well, that. Go ahead.
Okay. Just that we had a meeting on November 8th. Again, continued our teams, weighted grades, gifted services, continued their research. So that was the last meeting, November 8th. There is a meeting next week. And we're talking about possibly some adjustments to that because we've got the December 6th conversations for primary facility scheduled. So we'll have to think about what's the best thing to do. We want to make sure that those folks have access to that community conversation. So they shift a little bit and have teams be on the road, but we have not communicated that yet to CCs.
Okay, thank you. Superintendent Committee Liaison Reports, the Belonging Committee met November 15th. Do you want to report to us, Belonging?
Yeah, I can share it. We did have our last meeting on November 15th, and we continue to focus on the idea of belonging. We actually have talked a lot during that meeting about plans for today's Professional Development Day. I know at our high school specifically, they moved forward with those important conversations. They were looking at student data, student feedback, and what students are sharing in terms of their thoughts on belonging and how they feel about that concept here at school. So excited to hear the belonging included. I would hear back from that high school team who presented today. So I'm excited to hear about the conversation that happened at that school level. We shifted gears a little bit to the other programs based on the current events.
When does the collaborative meet?
Their meeting, it's I believe it's 13th.
December 13th, yeah.
All right, thank you. Community engagement. Lots going on. No, go ahead. Yes. Sports events, drama events. Model UN events. Number of.
None of the other, meetings, right, school foundation.
I did attend the school foundation meeting. They actually had a great foundation meeting. They have decided to have fewer meetings during the year in hopes that they can get more people to come, and it did. And then they broke into their work groups, but I shared with them some of the things that were going on, and I think one thing that they really were excited to hear about was the facilities. So I ended up showing them the worksheet that the architect has put together, the kind of the timeline, and there was a lot of robust discussion on that.
And then I just saw that they had their fundraiser at W over the weekend, they raised.
Yes.
15 million.
Yeah.
That was fun.
And they are right in the middle of their annual request for too. So you probably each received solicitation.
I attended the Pinhole Photography Art Project last
Yes.
Monday, and
Last Monday.
always neat to see what the eighth graders are doing. I believe it was eighth grade focused exclusively. Yeah, talk about innovation. Just really a wonderful display, a lot of creativity. Great event. Yeah, great.
All done with a camera they made themselves.
Totally, yeah. It's nice to see back in action. My son reminded me that they weren't able to do it during this year. COVID shut down, so back it's back in full force. It's a really good night.
Jeannie, you mentioned our football team, they did very well on Saturday, and so they'll play in the state championship this coming Saturday, which is absolutely outstanding.
Will there be, I don't know if I should ask this at the meeting, but I'm just curious if there's a spirit bus. Is that
We're working on this.
determined?
We're working on
not sure.
details today.
Yes.
For people who want to go to the game to ride up or to sit off.
Like students, you know, what, I mean,
We're working on it today. I just said that will come.
Drive
to you.
back.
Yeah. Get the front of
Yeah, both fans are all in the
And the
works.
game will be in Keene.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right, so it's,
4 hours.
it's not Columbus,
Yeah.
right?
It's camp.
Oh. I know it's students, like,
Yes.
Yeah, we did have.
And they can get on the bus and go to sleep. The driver just gotta stay awake.
Right.
So
So if-
that's why the bus will be
if there
more
was
relevant.
one that would come back
It
that
is.
night.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry, this is not.
Well, the team. The team.
No, the team's today planning. With the spirit bus. With only the students and not their parents is going to come home.
Right. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Any other community engagement? Then we'll move on. Do you?
Did you want? Yeah.
Sure.
Go ahead.
All right.
At the communications audit. So
Yes.
it's just in support of our strategic plan to make sure that we are building structures to strengthen partnerships with our students and our families and our community members. We're going to undergo a communication audit. We're doing that with facilitated by the Hamilton County Educational Service Center. Probably take 5 to 6, 7 weeks. It will entail probably some Google surveys to our stakeholder groups, some focus groups, a review of the materials that we're sending out. And then the Hamilton County ESC will kind of give us some feedback on all of those things. And then we can use them. I'm excited about using some of that to immediately in our redesign of the website. And so there's some things that we can immediately be doing based upon that. So,
As I read through your report, it's one of the groups also those people who, like the 0 to 5 people who don't have kids yet.
I mean,
As a focus group, because I think that.
as a
We've already
focus group,
found
I'm
out
not sure.
that The Golden Cowboys, once you give them some information, they really like being informed and reach out to do more things. So.
That is definitely a group that we've identified that we'd like to be more closely connected with. So,
The other person I was thinking of after I read your report, I wrote the list, the person who has put together a master calendar, not just schools, but community issue. Can we make sure that there's some conversation with her, both how she put it together and maybe what challenges she's come up against? Because every once in a while, I think she asks people for information. It would be nice to see how successful it is, or if she's found that once more people are saying, oh gosh, I just don't know where to look. Thank you.
it will most likely be maybe end of January, end of February. We've got some other survey and some other works in some other areas. So it will probably be February, March timeframe.
Okay. Terrific. All right, facilities. I know that you're having a meeting tomorrow. Oh,
My report.
this will go on for
I got you.
Okay, great.
4 to 5.
All right, planning and goal setting did not meet. There will be something coming up, but right now it's nothing to report. Policy review, if you don't mind, I'd like to hold that off till we get to the Board of Education report, because we're going to have a second reading on and improve a number of those policies down there. And so we go down to student achievement.
So we did not have a district leadership team meeting in November. Our next meeting is scheduled for December 22nd. But connected to student achievements, some conversations today were related to our most recent data on our district report card, school report cards, looking at student data, all with the goal of helping to drive instruction and understand individual student needs. And it had a particular study, or particular focus on growth. You know, that achievement will say one thing, student growth will say another. So we're really continuing to focus on how do we move students from where they are right now to grow at every level, whether students come in high achieving or when students are struggling. We want to make sure that we're moving them from that point forward. So good conversations today around that during our meeting day.
All right, thank you. And if we move on to the Board of Education report, we have a number of policies for which we had a first reading and went over them at our last meeting. I don't know that anyone has had any further questions. So I'm going to go on to the next thing, which is to approve a resolution of appointment to Great Oaks Career Campuses Governing Board, which would set Toya Wood up for another 3-year term. And if that's acceptable to all, may I have a motion to approve the Board of Education report?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Bellmeyer,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. G,
Yes.
Mrs. Zoller,
Yes.
Mrs. Broderick.
Yes. Thank you. Treasurer's report.
Thanks, Jeannie. Item A, approval of the minutes from the meetings on the regular meeting on October 24th and the planning meeting on November 16th. Item B, approve the statement of revenues and expenditures for month ending October 31st. Item C, accept with appreciation the donations listed on the agenda. Item D, the November appropriation adjustments. Item E is approval of the 5-year forecast that we reviewed tonight. And item F is the annual resolution requesting authorization to file the modified tax budget. The county tax budget is the next step in the formal budget process. The tax budget, the county auditor has a modified version that we all public school districts in Hamilton County use, but because it's different than the original full version, every year we have to actually authorize the use of that form that the county auditor has requested that we use, which I am in full support of. So I appreciate your support. Item G, approval of the report, please.
Right. May I have a motion to approve the report?
So moved.
Second? May I have a roll call?
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. G,
Yes.
Mrs. Zoller,
Yes.
Mrs. Broderick,
Yes.
Mr. Bellmeyer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is the county on a fiscal year that hooks up with the state of June to July?
I think the county runs a calendar year, but they approve our budgets based on fiscal year.
They're all different.
Yeah, well, yes.
Oh dear.
Yeah, in fact, when you look at the budget commission schedule, schools, cities, and then there's, I think the city of Cincinnati actually has its own separate schedule. Yeah, they have separate meeting dates to approve school districts.
Thank you. Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Jeannie. Number 1 is recommendation to approve resignations that have been submitted. Number 2 is a recommendation to approve resignation specifically for the purpose of retirement. And so we are excited. It's bittersweet, but excited for David Rensberger, who will retire after 23 years in Wyoming. He's currently in 8th grade science. He's been the co-chair or the chair for the science department for really most of his career. He's really been a leader in the science department. So super excited for him. And then Carrie Smith, who will retire at the end of the year with 30 years of experience. And she's worked at each building level, and she's been a class advisor, and she really enjoys her time also as a golf coach and makes great connections with kids within that role. So it's nice to celebrate people who've made that amazing impact, especially when you hear kids talk about them all the time. So pretty cool. So congratulations. Number 3 is a recommendation to approve 2 athletic supplemental contracts. You can see these are for high school boys reserve basketball and middle school basketball. Number 4 is a recommendation to approve this non-athletic supplemental contract. This is for math counts, and so Stephanie O'Hara will support students who are participating in that program. Number 5, recommendation to approve the auditorium manager substitute work. And so this is work that Scott Powers has already completed to pitch in with that. Number 6, similar to that, is a recommendation to approve Scott as an auditorium manager to fill the needs of the work that's set up for the remainder of the year.
And this works with the resignations we
Yes.
received earlier, so we'll have a nice smooth
Yes.
transition.
Yep.
All right,
Yep.
thank you.
Number 7 is a recommendation to approve an after-school program teacher. And so Josh Jones is going to be part of that, that support for students, which is great. Number 8, recommendation to approve home instruction. And this staff member will be supporting students that have special needs. And number 9, recommendation to approve a student auditorium worker. So Chloe Knapp will be helping out within the auditorium.
Okay.
And then if you look at
Oh, yeah, this is.
item B, we've got, we talked a lot about opportunities, student opportunities for travel. So we have 3 opportunities for travel here. So the high school.
She says if she has enough people, she'll go looking for chaperones.
All right, well, we're jumping pretty fast. So our junior class will lead convention. We're excited about that. It is a 121-mile trip to Columbus.
But they have a great time
Around there.
every time.
Oh,
they
yeah.
go.
Yes, they do.
That's
And
an
and Model UN, which has incredible experiences. So this is for middle school again in Columbus. And then, yes, Mr. Thomas, there is a trip to Morocco. I hear you might have some interest in.
Happy for the student.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, it looked awfully good.
And it goes back, these go back to the conversation that we had about our distinguished alumni who actually, made some choices in life based on travel that she had while attending Wyoming.
Yeah, right.
Which I think is phenomenal that the benefit from these trips sometimes come right away. Sometimes you reflect years later in life and they became, they were a catalyst for decisions that are made, which are powerful.
Absolutely.
What I love about this trip too, you just don't have that opportunity in life very much, is to go with a beloved teacher to see these places.
Yeah.
And she actually lived in Morocco for a period of time, so it's, in some ways, it's like her own backyard.
Wow.
Which I think would be
Yeah.
Wow, it's an incredible opportunity for the kids.
All right, thank you.
Fairly long.
4,252 miles. I looked it up just out of curiosity. Yeah, exactly.
10 days, that's the problem.
May I have a motion to approve the superintendent's report?
So moved.
And I will second. And may I have a roll call?
Mrs. G?
Yes.
Mrs. Oliver?
Yes.
Mrs. Frederick? Yeah. Mr. Bellmeyer?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're ready for a superintendent's update.
Okay, I have a different kind of an update today, and I really just wanted to speak for a moment about the power of the Wyoming City Schools family, which I have felt in the past week in many great ways. So I've got some notes, and I apologize. I'm going to just kind of look at these and share these with you because they're important. As you know, we recently shared the loss of an 4th grade teacher, Tana Novak. And Tana has impacted students, staff, families, our Wyoming community in many great ways. And every day I'm learning more and more about the impact that she has had on others and the fact that she will be missed so much. So today, as we came back from Thanksgiving holiday, today was really about providing the social and emotional supports to our staff members and to our students who we know are coming back into our classrooms tomorrow. So just to share a few things that happened, this morning we had the opportunity to come together as a district in support of the Novak family, each other and our students. So we started our day being connected, which was important. We leaned on the resources in our Wyoming community heavily during the day today, as we had specialists in the area of crisis intervention with Reverend Dr. Amy Snow and Rabbi Dave Burstein, who came to our primary and middle schools today to speak with staff. and they were speaking with staff about how to support one another and what to be watchful of and how to support students as they come in tomorrow, but ongoing. So it's really about, you know, the supports that need to be in place long term, which was super powerful. And then we also leaned heavily on our internal crisis team to support folks that potentially needed that support today and in the coming days. Another thing that we worked on today is communication about specific plans for when students return that are being shared with staff members, being shared with families, so that everyone's on the same page and in terms of how we can best take care of students in school and at home. And so those communication pieces are huge. So a large part of the day was really dedicated to those supports. And so as I think about that, just want to mention, you know, that I appreciate our staff and the courageous ways that they are moving forward to support one another and to support our students through intentional planning, communication, and connecting. I appreciate our Wyoming community as a resource and as a support, which is special. I mean, we are lucky to live in this community and to have these resources that can help us be better. And it's interesting, I made a note here too. I appreciate the district's mission, vision, and strategic plan. And as I think about the team that built that strategic plan, and when I saw what was happening today, we had opportunities to grow within teaching and learning. We had opportunities to grow within conversations around belonging. But the critical conversations also today were really about social and emotional health of our staff and our students and the power that came from those conversations. And also the focus on communication and the whole idea of partnership. Partnership was happening throughout the entire district today, which was awesome to see in such a difficult time. So, today I said certainly highlighted the importance of social and emotional well-being and our efforts today. I think we're powerful in supporting others. And then also, I do say it a lot that the partnership between students, staff, families, and our community in Wyoming is what makes the difference. And today it really showed that. And I just couldn't be more thankful to be in a community where that's the plan. That's the way it works. And all those pieces came together today and in the last week to support folks through a tough time. That's my update.
I think we've all been active, and I believe there are some plans too for the remembrance service. So,
I wasn't able to join this morning, the walk and things, but I really appreciate what the plan was to care for the care nurse, as it relates to teachers and just all the people who are going to be dealing with children and while processing. But it's just, it helps a lot. It matters a lot. It's a really big deal. And to your point, it's one of those things that reminds me and some of those people coming from our community, there are people who live here, kids are in the buildings and stuff too. So it's just a neat reflection on the capability, the resource that's in our community, their willingness to step in and be like, you can use me where,
Sure.
tell me where to go, tell me what to do. How can I help?
That's really what it was.
right, good, thank you. I believe that brings us to the end, which if it had been a 7:00 meeting, would be a record break. May I have a motion to adjourn? May I have a second? May I have a roll call?
Mrs. Oler?
Yes.
Mrs. Barger?
Yeah.
Mr. Bellmeyer?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. G?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're
Yeah.
officially adjourned.